Hello and welcome to U.S. Cricket Daily, the podcast covering all things Major League Cricket. I'm Peter Della Penna, and with me is Aaman Patel.
Yeah, Peter. Well, it seemed a little bit hotter down where you were today, a little bit more humid. But what we're talking about going into Major League Cricket, everyone was talking about Pat Cummins and getting him into the league. Well, he came good today, didn't he? Held his nerve in the final over, and the Unicorns, they win by 10 runs, and they get another chance at the Washington Freedom on Sunday night.
Yeah, this was arguably the match of the season in terms of the drama. Not necessarily the cleanest game played by either side. There were a lot of drop chances and some other miscues spotted around the game, but there was also some brilliance. We saw the Finn Allen century and Joshua Trump, Faf du Plessis, Devin Conway, some bright spots in the TSK chase. We'll get to all of that in a bit, but before we do, we want to let you know about Clyde Hill Publishing, because they're making this U.S. Cricket Daily podcast possible, as well as their book imprints, Clyde Hill and Pulley Press, which are dedicated to founders, innovators, thinkers, and tinkerers everywhere. If you want to find out more on the rise of Major League Cricket in America, pre-order our book at ClydeHillPublishing.com.
And also, don't forget to follow us at US Cricket Daily on Instagram, X, and TikTok. You can watch our episodes on YouTube. Just search US Cricket Daily.
Now, TSK win the toss. They choose to field. They fall short in the end by 10 runs. And a big reason why they fell short, Aaman, was the brilliance of Finn Allen. Unicorns being asked to play back-to-back nights, and tonight's game was by far the more difficult of the conditions. A lot more humid, a lot sweatier, a lot more physical stamina being tested, and Finn Allen stood up to the challenge. He batted for 13.4 overs, scored 101 off 53 balls, 9 fours, 5 sixes. He looked exhausted because he got out on the very next ball after he brought up his century with a 6 down the ground. He smashed it straight into the side screen. And then he got out, and from that stage, I thought they were going to make 230 easily, but 200 wound up being just enough in the end. 149 in the 13th over. I'll tell you what, TSK did an incredible job to pull them back in to make this match competitive.
Yeah, I think when you look at what TSK did all season, they would never, they kind of go one or two ways. They get off to really hot starts with the ball and take wickets in clumps, which they did against San Francisco earlier in the year, or they would kind of just bide their time, and towards the end of the innings, that's when they'd take a lot of their wickets and keep teams in check. They did a lot of that with DJ Bravo. Obviously, DJ Bravo not available after what happened with him in the injury, diving for that catch out there in the eliminator. So they had to go in different directions, and Noor Ahmed was just brilliant today. Looked really good on a surface that wasn't a crazy surface. This is only the third match being played on this very surface, so it's not that the pitch was playing many tricks, but Noor, I thought, just kept things really tight, and he just has that little trickery about him, right? Similar to Rashid Khan, his countryman who's worked a lot with, bowled the right pace in the air, and I thought the length was just brilliant for what he wanted to do. And so you saw the little fight back there, and it just kept the likes of Corey Anderson, it kept the likes of Hassan Khan and Shafane Rutherford kind of rooted to the spot and just unsure of where to go, how to play. And I was just impressed with him, and obviously for a guy like Bartman, for Othniel Bartman to get into the team and have to come in straight away and perform, was expensive, but we were able to take a wicket when he needed to. So you're getting guys to perform in different areas. You got an over from Savage, over from Hardy. I thought Faf just was willing to go real deep into the tool bag, and it allowed them to get back into the game.
Yeah, Noor Ahmed, the 8th over, 2 wickets and 3 balls, first getting Jake Fraser McGurk out for 18, and then Sanjay Krishnamurti dragging on 2 balls later for a second ball duck. I have to raise my hand and take partial blame for that, Aaman, because I was so determined to get pictures of Sanjay Krishnamurti for my catalog. I made sure to get my camera out tonight. I didn't get my camera out yesterday when he hit a 6 and hit some other really nice shots in the course of his innings. I thought, I didn't get any shots of him last night. Let me get my camera out tonight, get the long lens out, get the 500mm zoom out so I can get Sanjay Krishnamurti playing for the Unicorns. And he only lasts 2 balls. So maybe I need to put my camera away for Sunday night, and he might score some runs because it was clearly my fault. But Noor Ahmed, 3 for 27. You mentioned how good he was with the ball. On the flip side, though, he put down a chance at backward point fairly early on in the match. It was one of a number of missed chances by TSK in the field, and Albie Moracle the head coach for TSK, in the press conference after the game, he was asked, where do you think you lost the game? And he said, our fielding. He said, I feel like we did a great job to contain them to 200, but we should not have let them get away as much as they did in the first 10 overs. And he put the blame squarely on the fielders, not the batters who fell short by 10 runs in the end. It was very complimentary of Joshua Trump. We'll get to that in a bit. But the fielding, it was a dramatic game, but part of the drama, Aaman, was all the chances that TSK was putting down.
Yeah, it was very unlike what this tournament has been. I think the fielding had been pretty good all tournament long, and it just seems to kind of have cycled from that. Was it the MI New York game where they just missed a whole bunch of runouts against Texas and opportunities to kind of get ahead of the game, and so that's one layer of it. You're not misfielding, but you're not taking those chances. And again, it just kind of cycled into this, and you're not sure as to why. You heard Janoy Drysdale talk about it in the kind of flash and just talk about ball in the dark night sky, which is absolutely fair. There isn't a lot of they talk about depth and how it's easier to catch on a cloudy day when there's clouds in the sky when it's just clear or completely overcast because it's all flat. But this hasn't been a real issue, and it just seemed to all the drops that you expect maybe throughout the course of a season just kind of manifested themselves in one game. And I think Albie Merkel's right on the money because their batters played really well. Their bowlers fought back beautifully. You just had to take those chances. And the adage is catches win matches. It's cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason because it holds true. And so you mentioned the Noor Ahmed catch, and there's plenty more where it comes from. And you take those, and it's a whole different game. You don't let those big scores come on the board. You don't let them get to 200. You get them to maybe hold just to 180, maybe 170, and now this chase looks so much easier on a wicket that seemed to have gotten better to bat on in the second innings because it seemed like there was some dew that set in. It's a whole other ball game. So yeah, I think Morkel's spot on here, and he usually is, but I think it is really on the fielders here. I think you got to take those catches to win the game, and you take those catches and the whole complexion of the match changes.
Before we get to the second innings, one other guy we got to spotlight. You've been a big fan of his over the course of the entire season, Aaman, but Hassan Khan comes in late in the innings, 27 not out off 15 balls, gives them a bit of a burst after there was a lull after Finn Allen got out. And again, he's a difference maker. He's been a difference maker all season, and again, he comes in with that burst at the end of the innings, and then he takes 1 for 25 with the ball. He's far and away the best first-round pick, perhaps across both seasons of MLC.
Yeah, he's right up there. I think Josh Trump gave him some run for his money today with the performance he had. But no, Hassan Khan is quite brilliant. And I think everyone who kind of was around minor league cricket really felt strong things about him. And he's just showing it. He's just 25 years old, and he's going to be in the system for a while. And he has the PSL experience being in Pakistan before this. So you've seen a guy kind of flourish and just really get comfortable with his game, and you see him with the bat understand how he wants to play when it's required on him to be really the more aggressive suit or build a partnership. And we saw that throughout the season with the ball. I think he's gotten better and better and better, and it really was a weak point for the Unicorns last season, their spin bowling. You had Shadab Khan, but beyond that, you weren't taking wickets with Shadab Khan, and then your only other option was a guy in Chaitanya Bishnoi who would get maybe an over a game. I didn't see they were very comfortable throwing him the ball consistently. This season, Hassan Khan is the frontline spinner. There is no Shadab Khan. So they've gone, hey, Hassan Khan, you're our one spinner. You have Sanjay Krishnamurti, but he hasn't bowled an over. Or he's bowled one over, I think, in one of the matches. But it's been Hassan Khan really that's spearheaded the spin bowling attack, and he's done it really well. I've been super impressed, but it's no surprise when you see the kind of performances he had in minor league cricket. And again, I know the Unicorns were jumping up and down when they got him number 2 overall when he was able to slide that far.
Now, before we take a look at the chase, we want to give you some more sound bites from the ground in Grand Prairie Stadium, and we have a collection of them for you tonight. The first of those is a guy named Ahmad Qureshi. He's very involved in the local cricket scene here in Dallas. He owns a local club team. He's a young guy, but he's got a lot of connections, and he's also a fan of the game just in general, whether he's involved on the ownership side of things or not. Well, we talked to Ahmad about his experiences following USA in the World Cup and MLC so far this season in Dallas, and here's what he had to say. Team owner for one of the local teams here that's entered into local competitions in Dallas, various T20 tournaments that come to this part of the world. You got a Cornet Dry jersey on, but you're here supporting the local team tonight. Tell us your involvement in the U.S. and the Dallas cricket ecosystem.
Hey Peter, thanks so much for having me. Yes, I do have a Cornet Dry jersey on. He's a good friend of mine. I saw him in his last game over here, and I told him, I said, Cornet, you got to give me that jersey. It looks good. And he was like, sure, why not? And then my involvement here in Dallas cricket is I started playing cricket whenever I was 12, 13 years old. Fell in love with it. I first got involved in Dallas cricket in DPL 2021. That's when I first put my team in a proper big tournament. We had a great time, and that's where I met Cornet. That's where I met Obis Pinar, Ryan Scott, Abdullah Say, a couple of those guys. They were considered our pros. So when they came on, we had a good tournament, lost in the semifinal. And ever since then, I've just been, involved in any local tournament that goes on here. With Major League now, it's amazing coming over here and just watching all the games, watching the world's best play together. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do right now over here.
You were telling me earlier, one of the things that you appreciated about MLC compared to the World Cup, you came to the USA-Pakistan game during the World Cup, 10:30 a.m. start, a little bit hotter than it is tonight here in Grand Prairie. The fact that MLC changed their schedule this year to have more night games than day games, because there were quite a number of day games last year, and the feedback from fans was that it just was unbearable. Not just the fans, but also the players. Yeah. And we saw that in the World Cup too. So the fact that you've got this kind of stadium where you can play floodlight cricket, take in this atmosphere, what does that mean to you, considering you're somebody who's born and raised in this part of the community?
Yeah, so the Pakistan-USA game, it was so hot. I remember waking up and I was just dreading the fact that it's going to be so hot out here. I was excited. It's my first World Cup game. I've never seen my country play in person, but, my biggest fear was, what if I get a heat stroke just being here? So whenever we got here, I sat down. I sat in the first row over there, section 106. I was in row 1. I sat there for 10 minutes, and I kid you not, within 10 minutes, I had to get up and go watch the game from the back for, majority of it. It was just unbearable. If you have a beautiful stadium like this with floodlights, you can play night games. I don't understand why you wouldn't have a World Cup game in the evening. I guarantee you it would have been so much more exciting had we been able to watch it in a more comfortable setting. It's not that hot. Right now, the weather's amazing. So it's laughable at this point as to why such a big game was played in the morning. I did like the crowd that day, though. The crowd was still there. The Pakistanis came out in full support. But they just should have done a much better job with scheduling. Props to Major League Cricket. They have most of their games in the evening. I've came to almost every single game, missed maybe a few due to traveling. I've enjoyed every moment of it. It's a beautiful stadium. The fans are great. It's almost a sold-out stadium tonight. So, yeah, that's my take on that.
You're going to come back for the final. What's your forecast in terms of who do you think is going to lift the trophy?
So in the final, I honestly think whoever wins out of these two between San Francisco and Texas, I still think Washington is just going to dominate. Their lineup is just unbelievable. Travis Head, 550s in a row. You got Steve Smith opening with him, who on his day can be brutal. You have Maxwell. You have Gauss, who in my opinion is the best batter in the U.S. You got Obis to come. And plus my friend Yasser plays there also. So, whoever wins from this game, I will still be supporting Washington and hoping that they pull off a victory.
Our thanks to Imad Qureshi for taking some time to speak with us. And he's going to be backing the Freedom on Sunday night, Aaman, because he's good friends with Yasser Muhammad. I was talking to Imad, and all of a sudden in the middle of the interview, Yasser Muhammad and Rahman Dar walk by and they start shaking hands with him, and I realized, oh my God, we've interviewed the whole posse of Washington Freedom friends and family. Apparently, that they're going to think there's some collusion in our U.S. Cricket Daily podcast with all the people who seem to know each other we've got on. But Ahmad was a great guest, and we thank him for his time. Now, the chase. Highlight of the chase, Aaman. Corey Anderson. Catch of the season, arguably. One-handed screamer. This is SportsCenter top 10 play worthy, Aaman. We've seen Corey Anderson make top 10 plays before when he was playing for New Zealand a decade ago. He might have given himself a strong chance at squeezing in there tonight if SportsCenter's producers are paying attention to what's going on in Grand Prairie Stadium, because that catch was a thing of beauty. One-handed screamer to his strong hand, but still, you got to be good enough to get airborne and to hold on, stick the landing, because sometimes your elbow hits the ground and the ball falls out. He checked every box, Aaman.
Oh, it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And hey, we've seen Mitch Santner on SportsCenter top 10 for what he did in Major League Cricket. So maybe we'll see Corey Anderson on that top 10 list as well. But to me, that was the difference in the game. Faf du Plessis was just having another one of those Faf du Plessis innings. There's a reason he's the highest run scorer in the tournament, and probably will end up being that unless Travis Head has a Nicholas Puddin type of innings. It is going to be Faf du Plessis. And there was no stopping him. Whether you bowled wide, whether you bowled short, whether you bowled full, Faf was finding runs, kind of 360, and you had chances being dropped. He was dropped twice. Before that catch was taken, one drop from Finn Allen, which he's running around, diving forward, probably a little harder chance. And then the easier one of the two was Janoy Drysdale at fine leg, really made a meal of it. It was just shocking. You said, well, it's TSK's day. San Francisco is doing everything they can to lose this one with how they're repaying Texas in the field. And then Corey Anderson takes that catch, and you could see on the celebration from Corey, it was just relief. He just punted the ball away. He said, finally, we got this guy out. But what it does, it just puts some pressure on a guy like Devin Conway, who into this game hadn't really found the runs. Aaron Hardy, who he now needs to score, and it gives you life again. And so then it allowed a guy like Janoy Drysdale to take a breath too, I think, because if Af keeps going and then you give the ball to Janoy Drysdale, he's going to sit there in the back of his mind and say, man, I dropped him. And we had a chance to get him, and I dropped him. And you're going to try to overcommit to a wicket there versus what he did when he got the ball. He just came in, bowled his stuff, slowed it down on a length, and then would have the odd one speed through, and he got a couple to 137, which was really impressive. 137 Ks. That was really impressive to see. And then he takes the wicket of Aaron Hardy, takes the wicket of Marcus Stoinis, and you're thinking, hey, game on here, because Hassan Khan gets Milind Kumar in the midst of that. And to me, it all starts from that Faf wicket. You take the catch, not only is it a screamer, not only is it your captain, but you've gotten rid of the guy that you've put down twice. You've taken this whole thing of, man, have I dropped the game. Game's back on. Game's even. Go out there and play. And Janoy Drysdale, who got the call-up because Liam Plunkett gets hurt. Liam Plunkett is his minor league teammate in Philadelphia. Janoy Drysdale is also a reserve on that USA squad. They call him in, and he's been amazing. I remember Rishabh from It's Called Cricket. He was in Morrisville. He asked me, what do you think of Janoy Drysdale? And I said, I like the way he bowls. It's high arm action, but it's just something different. You see the way the wrist comes in. It's very flingy at the end, very slingy, even from the high position. And he gets a little bit of extra bounce that you just don't expect when you play him. And he comes in, does the job. And again, the catalyst for me was the Corey Anderson catch, because it eases everyone's nerves. And even with the poor fielding to continue, you're back in the game, you're back in the fight, and your team believes again.
I mean, TSK, they actually had a better power play than the Unicorns. They were 77 after 6 overs. Unicorns were 66 after their first 6, so they actually got off to a way better start. But you talked about, the du Plessis dismissal, but then Janoy Drysdale following it up, and Hassan Khan. The domestic players, they were the bowlers who took all the wickets tonight. It wasn't the overseas guys. It wasn't Harris Ruff. It wasn't Pat Cummins. And that 4-over stretch after the power play ended, they took 3 wickets for just 14 runs in overs 7 to 10, and that had a huge impact on the game. But I want to, again, highlight this a little bit more. The 4 wickets that fell was the domestics. Carmine LaRue, he was the bowler who was the guy who sent down the ball that got Faf du Plessis. Everybody's going to remember Corey Anderson taking the catch. I don't think too many people are going to remember Carmine LaRue bowling the ball that got the wicket, especially harsh on Carmi, considering what he's been through this season. I mean, he took a drive straight to the face on a return chance, and everybody thought, oh my God, is he going to even play again? And not only is he back in the lineup, but he's taken arguably the most famous wicket of the season, and nobody's going to remember him for it. They're only going to remember Corey Anderson, that half of it. But he took the wicket. Hassan Khan takes a wicket. Janoy Drysdale takes 2 wickets. And you talked about Pat Cummins. I thought he had a dreadful game up until the final over. I mean, he was horrendous his first 3 overs. And then he shows his experience when it matters, though. That final over, they needed 18. And it was Cummins against Conway and Joshua Tromp. And Joshua Tromp, 19 years old, played phenomenally tonight. He's had a really rough season, but TSK showed faith in him. 56 not out off 36 balls, 5 fours and 2 sixes. Before we get to the final over, Albie Markle again talked about it in the press conference. Sticking with him, you could see that his confidence was dented earlier in the season. He felt like you could see that the body language, Albie Markle in his own words, saying that he just looked he wasn't the same guy at the start of the season because some of those dismissals had taken a toll on him, but they wanted to stick with him. They wanted to show faith, and it came up. And one of the things that impressed me the most, Aaman, tonight about Joshua Tromp is the unorthodox shots. This is something I harp on about relentlessly about the USA players. Why don't they scoop? Why don't they reverse sweep? Why don't they play some of these unorthodox shots? You got to do something to disrupt the bowler's rhythm, throw them off balance, make them think a little bit, challenge them, get them out of their rhythm. And Joshua Tromp did that incredibly well tonight. The timing he had in terms of knowing which balls to pick to play those scoops and to play those ramp shots, and not just picking his spots, but to be able to execute when the opportunity rose. That's something that so many USA players who have a hell of a lot more experience than him on the batting side, they all struggle with. And to see a 19-year-old do that so effectively tonight, that stood out to me, especially in that 19th over against Harris Ralph. When Harris Ralph, after 3 singles to start off the over, the pressure was on. Things were going very firmly in the direction of the Unicorns. And then here comes Joshua Tromp on strike, plays the scoop over fine leg, then hits another boundary to end the over. That impressed me an awful lot. What stood out to you about the way Joshua Tromp played tonight?
Yeah, I think Josh Tromp is he's an exceptional talent. You were surprised when you saw the 75K draft slot attached to him. But it's a pick for the future. It's an investment for the Super Kings, and you mentioned them sticking with it, and that's what they should do, because you watch Josh Tromp bat, he's not rushed. I think we talked about in that first game against LAKR. I sat there and I watched Josh Tromp. He only scored 18 runs off 12 deliveries and was undone by a brilliant Duran Davis catch, but you didn't see him feel out of place. You didn't see him feel uncomfortable, and he's very confident, very young, but has, as you mentioned, all the shots in the book. And I think coming off the low string of scores, it could be very easy to get into a shell and not want to go and do something crazy to be dismissed, right? And then think, man, if I would have just played with the straight bat and just got my one down the ground. What impressed me was that at 19, those wickets did seem to affect his mindset in that game. Could it have affected him in practices and on body language? Absolutely. But once he got into the middle, he got into his zone, his space, and you hear all the best players in the world talk about once you're out there in the middle, you just have to get into your own bubble. Steve Smith says this all the time. You just got to get into your own. He's in his own little bubble. He's not worried about what happened before, what happened after. He's just playing the ball. And you saw Josh Tromp just play the ball. Didn't play the bowler. Didn't care who it was. He could have easily said, "Man, this is Harris Ralph. This is a different level. This isn't for me. This is a guy bowling 150 Ks. This is a guy bowling 90 miles an hour." He sat there, hit him straight back for 6, scoops him for 4 when he needs to. So this was a very confident young man, and he just got into a headspace, got into his bubble, and played his style of cricket, which, again, is so good to see. Something else you said that I want to harp on, you talked about the domestics taking all the wickets, and Josh Tromp, a domestic that was stuck with by TSK. What the domestics do is it gives your internationals time to win you games. I think in this kind of a league where you have 6 internationals, your internationals are very important. They end up being the difference in winning and losing, right? But your domestics buy you time. Pat Cummins, as you mentioned, didn't have a great game with the ball. 4 overs, 50 runs. He went for 12 runs and over. But what Carmi LaRue, Hassan Khan, and Janoy Drysdale did, they took the wickets, they did the heavy lifting, and then at the end, he just has to have one good over. And you're going to back Pat Cummins have one good over any day of the week. Josh Trump, what he did was keep the game going with Devin Conway, even after you lose Marcus Stoinis and Aaron Hardy and Milind Kumar very quickly. Josh Trump keeps the game in hand. So the teams that value their domestics highly, that you can see, and draft well and commit to guys, like the Unicorns with Sanjay Krishnamurti, the Unicorns with Hassan Khan and Carmine LaRue, who they brought back. When you look at the team they're going to play in the final, Washington, with Andres Krauss and Sorbnitzer Volker and Obis Pinar, they invested. Then, I think with Washington, you get very lucky to get arguably the best bat and the best ball domestically. But you see these teams scout well, draft well, and then invest. Those are the teams that are reaping the rewards. And you're going to look at MI New York last season, you say, oh, well, it's just Nicholas Budin. They don't get to that final without Cheyenne Jahangir stepping up in the opening spot. He scored 44 in the Eliminator to get them into the Challenger, to then get Dewald Brevis an opportunity to get 50, and then Nicholas Budin an opportunity to get 100. So your domestics buy your internationals time. And this season, I think, has been way more about your domestics buying internationals time. And we saw it today from both teams at different moments in time.
Well, time's not out for the Unicorns, who are going to go into the final against the Freedom, but time is up on the 2024 MLC season for Texas Super Kings. But before their clock ran out here in Grand Prairie Stadium, I got a chance to speak to Texas Super Kings co-owner Anurag Jain, not only about how his franchise has fared over the course of the first two seasons, but MLC as a whole, and where he expects the league and his franchise to go over the coming years in season 2 of MLC, especially with regards to Texas Super Kings.
We're super happy. Look at the quality of cricket that's being played, the kind of talent that we have brought here, the kind of game that you're watching right now, which is the pre-eliminator game between San Francisco and the TSK. I am super excited. I'm excited about the fans that are walking around, the energy that is in the field here. I couldn't be more excited.
One of the things that a lot of people have talked about and that they've enjoyed thoroughly about this season in particular is the fact that this stadium, one of the reasons I think it's the best facility in America, better than what they have in Florida and better than some of the other options that are available in the U.S., is principally because you've got the floodlights here. You can host games like we're having tonight, 7:30 starts, where you hang around Texas and Dallas in the daytime. It's pretty miserable at times with the heat, but it's you could say it's night and day. It's literally day and night. You come here and it's such a comfortable atmosphere. It's really enjoyable. You're getting a good turnout. Why is that the way forward for you as a franchise owner and as a league, that you've taken that path as opposed to scheduling games like we saw in the World Cup at 10:30 in the morning to try and capitalize on that TV audience on the other side of the world?
Look, we're building a product for the American market. We're here when it satisfies our fans when they want to come to the game. We have great American players and international players, but our focus is the American market. Yes, it'll take a little longer. Maybe our TV deals are a little bit lighter because we're playing with the US market, but we don't care. We really believe in this market, and we want to go slow and steady and play into this market. Now, David Agnew's done a great job with this wicket, by the way. We're playing really great. We've had some cracker games. We've had some, pretty high scores as well. And we're seeing one high scorer today as well, right? So it's a great ground. I think the best facility in America, like you said. Great lights, great infrastructure, amazing pitch, and it's an amazing facility with great fans.
What's been the biggest positive for you in season 2 in terms of the way that this franchise now fits into the Dallas-Fort Worth sports landscape, whether it's the other pro franchises, Cowboys, Stars, Mavericks, Rangers, and how Texas Super Kings is carving out their own niche in that setup?
Before I talk about the Texas franchise, I will talk about USA cricket. We had one season of MLC and see what happened in terms of the quality of the American players. It rose and we went to qualify for the Super 8. You saw that. I believe a lot of that happened because of floodlight on them and because MLC had them working with foreign players in the same locker room. They learned, they hang out with them, and you see the quality improving amazingly. We're seeing that in our own little franchise. We're also seeing a little bit of an ecosystem develop around sports. I mean, Texas does one thing well, that's sports, and our Texans like sports, right? And so we believe that we're building a nice little ecosystem here where fans across the different sports can enjoy it and be here. just like you're seeing today. And with that amazing shot,
And it's one reason people are getting excited. Just saw Joshua Trump hitting 6. And it's not just been the overseas guys. Joshua Trump, he's a teenager, born in South Africa, but he's come over here. He's trying to break into the USA national team setup. He was the first-round draft pick this year. What has impressed you about not just him, but across some of the other teams as well? You've got Sanjay Krishnamurti on the other side of the field tonight, who had an amazing knock earlier this year for the Unicorns. You've got Janoy Drysdale, who's taking a couple wickets tonight for them. It's not just the overseas guys, but some of the local guys are holding their own.
well, long term, we believe that the local talent will win over, and that will what will drive the league. But it's amazing the sparks we're already seeing. Every team has 1 or 2 players that have done a great job. And look at Josh Trump. He's young, he's hungry, he wants to be out there. He's sucking it all in from all his foreign peers right now. But when he goes out and bats, I just want him to perform and do well for himself, because, he's a 10-year player. He's not a 1 or 2-year player. Over 10 years, you'll see him develop and he'll blossom into one of the top talents in the world. My dream is the best cricket in the world is played on American soil.
What else do you want to say to anybody listening out there in terms of what you hope to see happen over the next several years in Major League Cricket, in terms of how it's going to hopefully impact the American market leading into the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles, especially because we have Paris 2024 starting today?
That's the most exciting thing. The fact that cricket is coming to Olympics in 2028 and is right in American soil is amazing. You're seeing the U.S. team doing so well. You're seeing American players rise and shine. You're seeing some of the best talent in the world come right here. But you'll also start seeing more facilities like this. This is a beautiful facility, but we'll have 5 more stadiums like this over the next 3 or 4 years. And that means you'll be able to play cricket all over America. We're building academies so young kids can go learn cricket. And we think that's important for the grassroots. We'll play school cricket. We'll have college cricket. We will dominate this American market over a period of time as the fans and the local sport builds.
Our thanks again to Anurag Jain for taking some time during the chase. It was a very tense chase, Aaman, and yet Anurag was cool as a cucumber. And not only was he cool watching his side, watching Joshua Trump and Devin Conway in the waning moments of the chase, but he was very gracious enough to just take a few minutes to talk to me and talk to U.S. Cricket Daily about what's been going on. So we thank Anurag Jain for his contribution to this episode. And now it's time to look forward to the final. The Freedom, the Unicorns, top of the table at the end of the regular season. They faced off in the qualifier. Freedom prevailed. Unicorns have beaten TSK to get another crack at Freedom in the final. Aaman, where's your money?
I've said Washington all season long. I've said it since the draft, and I can't move it. Now that they're in the final, I just like their domestics and the way they've been performing, and I think what now sets Washington kind of over the edge as well is Glenn Maxwell's got some runs under his belt, and if you got Glenn Maxwell scoring runs, you don't feel like any total is safe when they're chasing, and you feel like they can set any total that they want. Now the one hole you're gonna have is Lockie Ferguson. If he's out, you can bring a guy like AJ Tye in, who was one of the leading wicket takers in the league last season, but was maybe a touch expensive. So that's the one hole that you have. Even then, I still think that Washington is the best team in the competition. But I think this game is going to be an absolute corker. But give me Washington to just edge past San Francisco.
And I spoke to some officials today about Lockie Ferguson's injury, and I was curious whether or not Jesse Singh would be able to be brought in as replacement. And the information that I received is that the application by the Freedom to have Jesse Singh come in as a replacement was denied because there's a very strict rule in terms of local players have to replace local players and overseas players can only be replaced by other overseas players. So Jesse Singh, being a U.S. player, is not allowed to replace Lockie Ferguson as an overseas heading into the final. So for anybody who's curious, will Jesse Singh make another appearance for the Freedom? Can he get another player of the match award like he did for his other 2 appearances for the Freedom? The answer is going to be no. So like Aaman said, you're going to potentially see AJ Tye come in to the lineup to fill in the spot that's vacated by the Lockie Ferguson injury. That's something to watch. On the flip side, for the Unicorns, do you feel like they're going to play the same 11, or do you think there's any adjustments that they may need to make going into the final to give themselves a better shot of knocking off the Freedom this time around?
I don't know if they make any changes. I think maybe you want to add a spinner, but do you feel comfortable about Ahmed and what he brings? Since they've taken him out of the lineup in favor of Shafrae Rutherford, they've had a lot of success, and Haris Rauf has been good. So I don't imagine you could take him out. I don't think there's any changes coming to the 11 for their point of view. I think that the big thing for them is just going to be about. I think a lot of it hinges on Janoy Drysdale, to be honest with you, because he's the bowler that Washington is going to want to attack. He's the one that has the least experience. He's not Pat Cummins or Haris Rauf, doesn't have that name recognition. Then he's not Carl Myluru, who's swinging it a long way. So he's the one pace bowler that you look at that you say, okay, we're going to have to attack him. And if you're San Francisco now and you're Corey Anderson, you're going to have to really gauge quickly. Do I give Janoy his 4, or do I need to come step in for a couple as well? And I think that's going to be a real key for the Unicorns to kind of restrict the freedom to runs, because if they start to get a liking to Janoy Drysdale, I need Corey Anderson to get in there quick. And on a surface that isn't worn and torn down, it might not be as effective for Corey Anderson of a night, but he's been effective enough to where I would feel comfortable handing him that ball. So to me, that's going to be the real matchup. Watch how Washington attacks Janoy Drysdale, and then I'm interested to see how Corey Anderson responds to the way Janoy Drysdale is going.
Well, there you have it. And reminder to everybody, stay tuned. After Sunday's final, we will have another edition of the podcast as we recap what happens in that 2024 MLC final between the Unicorns and the Freedom. We're going to have a first-time winner.
Can't wait to see that first-time winner. And we also have a bunch of folks who get their questions read on the podcast for the first time and a couple for maybe a couple of other times. But before we get to that, Peter, you've had a busy day just all around the ground. I think you're just the most famous man in Grand Prairie because you got to speak to a fan of the Washington Freedom, James Volkert, during today's game. Let's hear what he has to say.
For a variety of reasons. One of them is how he got into cricket in the first place. So, James, you're wearing a USA jersey, but you got into cricket during COVID. How?
Watching the test on Prime, season 1 I watched and really got into it, and then watched season 2 and watched it. And then also just my dad came down after 2 years of not seeing him, and we were just sitting around talking over Father's Day weekend, and we watched West Indies versus South Africa on ESPN Plus, and Googled all the words that they were saying while we were watching. It was a test match, and we were like, just what are they talking about? And we spent the whole weekend going back and forth between watching matches on ESPN Plus and watching the test.
The test and test cricket was your introduction to cricket.
Yes.
Like, you're here watching T20 cricket. You told me you were here for opening night at the World Cup to watch USA and Canada.
Yes.
You're wearing a USA jersey. Your son's got a Aaron Jones jersey. Your son Jack is supporting Aaron Jones wearing the number 85. So what kind of impact do you think that opening night match, USA's victory in the World Cup and their whole journey in the World Cup, has had on creating new fans like your son?
I brought someone who's never watched, even on TV, a cricket match with me, and he just fell in love with it. Just like to see them kind of behind a little bit, like struggling to get going, and then just to watch sixes after six after six, and then just his reaction, Jones's reaction at the end of that match, just when he fell to his knees, was just like, it was amazing. And then to hear the commentators on the other matches talking about it, I mean, it just made me proud. Like, it made me proud that they're talking about Dallas, they're talking about our stadium, they're talking about USA cricket, and it was just fun to watch.
Now, how much has coming out and watching matches in MLC maintained your interest in, and if anything, changed your perspective on cricket in America since the World Cup?
I think that first match was just totally different than watching it on TV. You just get a totally different perspective for the game. You can understand the scoring watching on TV, but you don't necessarily understand the minutia of the game, like what's going on between plays, watching the bowler shift sides. Like you can't see the shift on sides unless you know like what Lords is. Like, you're not going to know that they're necessarily shifting sides or like what's going on. And you're not seeing a lot of the movement because you just can't show it. So seeing it live just gave it a totally different perspective, made me much more of a fan. So.
And that helped you want to come out to watch MLC after the World Cup?
Yeah, I had already gotten my season tickets just because I wanted to support the league. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to continue just because I think it's a great opportunity to bring, like, it's the globalization of sport, right? Like, it's, you know, it's not something you're going to see every day. And so I was going to be out here anyway, but it just made me all that much more willing to come out and spend time out here.
You got your USA jersey on. The Olympics are starting today in Paris. Going to have cricket in the Olympics in 2028 in Los Angeles. What would it mean to you to see a USA cricket team playing in Los Angeles 4 years from now?
I think it would be spectacular. I mean, I would love to be out there watching it. And then, you know, I would expect it's going to be in the Brisbane Olympics too. So, you know, just, it would be, I think it's the second most watched sport in the world. Like, there's no reason it shouldn't be in the Olympics, and there's no reason the U.S. shouldn't be there.
Well, there you have it. Good to see the local fans coming in, and you know, it's been great to see the amount of support for Washington, for all these teams, from local individuals, people driving so many hours to get to these games, and it's been really cool to see that aspect of it. I mean, I got the opportunity to chat to a couple folks, and more so who didn't know cricket, saw the street sign and said, "Oh, this would be cool." Bought tickets on the spot, downloaded a video game for their son to play, and then came to the game trying to figure out some rules. So it's been a really cool way to get folks into cricket and get more and more people interested.
100%. James came with his young son, Jack, who was wearing an Aaron Jones USA number 85 jersey. So they're really catching the cricket bug in record time, Aaman. They've got their USA gear. They're supporting MLC. It's fantastic to see. And there's a lot more support for MLC from our listener base, who have been sending us questions in regularly throughout this season of U.S. Cricket Daily, and we want to hear more from all of you out there listening to the podcast. What's been your highlight of the tournament, and who do you think is going to win the final? Send us an email at hello@uscricketdaily.com. You can follow U.S. Cricket Daily on YouTube, Instagram, X, and TikTok. Just search U.S. Cricket Daily. Our question for today comes from Joe Hickey, the one and only PA man, who was there in New York throughout the T20 World Cup, and he does some work for minor league cricket out on the West Coast. We love Joe Hickey. Joe asks us, what do you make of the psychology of this playoff format, pitting a team that has already, quote, played for its life and is coming off a win, in this case Texas Super Kings, against a club that has just lost a game and is suddenly playing for its life, San Francisco Unicorns, might actually benefit the winner of the Eliminator? I kind of agree with you. My only qualm with the format as it stands is I think they should reverse the order of the playoff games. I think they should play the Challenger, the 1-2 game. That should be the first playoff game. And then you should have the Eliminator next, followed by the Challenger, because I think you still need to reward the teams that have finished in the top two and give them some incentive if they happen to lose. And that incentive being give them an extra off day. TSK, because they schedule the Eliminator first, it means TSK won, and then they have an off day. Whereas the Unicorns, despite of the fact that they finished second overall in the season, they had to play back-to-back. 2 matches in 24 hours for them, I think, is a really tough task. And I think that should be the task that goes to the team that's coming out of the 3-4 game. That would be my only change to the playoff format. Aaman, if you had to change anything, if you want to change anything, what would it be? Or do you like it as it stands now?
No, I completely agree with you, Peter. I remember looking at the schedule and almost being confused, thinking I was just reading it wrong. Because in my head, it would have been the 3-4 and then the 1-2, the Eliminator, and then you go and play the qualifier, and then you play the Challenger. I think that would have been the way I would have thought it would be, just because of the fact that, again, like you said, you get that extra rest day for the... Sorry, you play the qualifier, the Eliminator, and then the Challenger. I said it in reverse. But you, just like you mentioned, you give the team, you give the 1 or 2 that extra off day to play. And so, you know, I think the psychology is always interesting because I agree with him. I think it benefits the winner of the Eliminator. You're coming off a win, you're coming off a high. But you also, in the same breath, you're giving an opportunity for a team like San Francisco, who just lost number one, to sit there and say, all right, we got a second life, we got a new wind under our sails. But I think that extra rest day would be very important.
And a reminder, if you want to send us questions again, send them in to hello@uscricketdaily.com. And don't forget to subscribe, follow us, and rate us on Apple and Spotify. Ratings are very important in the world of podcasting. The more ratings we get, the higher up we go in the charts, and the more listeners we get, the more traction we get for all the cricket fans out there and the sports fans out there. So please do that. And if you want to get in touch, again, it's hello@uscricketdaily.com. Tomorrow, we've got a day off in terms of the actual on-field activities in MLC before we go into Sunday's final. And that means we've got an opportunity to give you a bonus podcast. We have an exclusive interview with MLC CEO Vijay Srinivasan, who was kind enough to take some time to speak to us at US Cricket Daily. And he was joined by US Cricket Daily co-founder John Riley, former editor-in-chief of Sky News. So stay tuned. That was a very enjoyable interview for me and Aaman to be able to do. So there's plenty of nuggets in there I'm sure the listeners out there will enjoy. Stay tuned for that. Dropping after this episode, before Sunday's final. And again, we'll follow you on the conclusion of Sunday's final to bring you all the gossip, the tidbits, all the drama from what happened in that final between the Unicorns and Washington Freedom. That'll do it for this episode of US Cricket Daily. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.